It's time for Windows Weekly 247, February 9th. And boy, I'll tell you, what a surprise. Minutes before the show aired, Steven Sinofsky wrote a blog post detailing everything you'd ever want to know about Windows 8 on ARM. They call it WOA, and we've got MOA next on Windows Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com. This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley, episode 247, recorded February 9th, 2012. Whoa, Nelly! Windows Weekly is brought to you by Carbonite Online Backup. Automatic, continuous, unlimited backup for your computer files, just $59 a year. Try it free at Carbonite.com and use the offer code WINDOWS to get 2 bonus months with purchase. And by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website or blog. For a free trial and 15% off your new account for 6 months, visit Squarespace.com and use the offer code WINDOWS2. And by Audible.com. To download the free audiobook of your choice, go to audible.com/Windows. It's time for Windows Weekly, and I'm so glad to be back with our good friends from the East. Paul,
it's like, I'm from Russia. And
she's from the East. Paul Thurrott, Mary Jo Foley, the two of them couldn't have two better experts on Microsoft and Windows. Paul, of course, his site, the SuperSite for Windows at WinSuperSite.com. He's also news editor for Windows IT Pro, the author of many Windows Secrets books, and his latest, Windows Phone Secrets. Mary Jo Foley, the author of the All About Microsoft blog for Ziff Davis. It's at allaboutmicrosoft.com. Hello. We were, before the show began, Paul, you were in a little bit of a funk.
I don't remember that.
The funky Paul Thurrott. Well, we do have, and maybe this is related and maybe not, we do have some news about Windows 8 and ARM. So just to bring you up, our story so far.
It's unfolding.
Microsoft Windows, of course, always an Intel product. That's why they called it Wintel. Actually, not always, because I know OS 10, not OS 10, NT ran on other platforms, including PowerPC, right? Briefly,
yep.
Yeah. Yep. But traditionally, it's a Wintel thing. And Microsoft announced with the release of Windows 8 and the tablet focus of Windows 8 that they would, in fact, be porting it to the ARM microprocessor, which runs most portable devices, some form of ARM processor. ARM is not the company ARM, which ironically was co-founded by Apple Computer. Is a what they call a fabless company. They don't make chips, but they make specs for chips, designs for chips, which other companies then incorporate into their chip design. Texas Instruments, Qualcomm, and many others. But making it ARM, the gist of making it ARM means that you'll be able to put it on portable devices like phones and tablets. So that's the story so far. Now we have some more news.
I don't know how we're going to get through this, Leo.
Are you depressed? Why? What's the problem?
There's so much stuff here. I in my own reading of this and then writing and posting, which it's been very brief, I've only scratched the surface. There's so much going on here.
Is this from Camp Sinofsky?
Yeah, I literally don't know where to even start.
Yeah, we should give a little background. So right before we started the show today, at 1:00 p.m. Eastern, they dropped this gigantic post on the Building Windows 8 blog about Windows on ARM. And up till today, we really knew almost nothing. We
knew what I just said, and that was about it.
Yeah. Exactly. Now, I don't know how long this post is. I didn't look it up. But, I mean, this is one of the longest ones yet. And there's a video, too. I mean, it's lengthy and detailed.
It's chock full. Well, I have to say, so these guys have blogged a lot, since last September. A lot. Honestly, most of the content has been fairly worthless to an end user. It's been very technical and deep and almost pointless in its completeness. But this one has a lot of very interesting information.
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't I just give you a sentence, and then you will gloss it. How about that?
Yeah, or a paragraph.
So Windows on ARM, or WOA, or should we say WOA, is a new member of the Windows family, much like Windows Server, Windows Embedded, or Windows Phone. As with those products, WOA builds on the foundation of Windows, and I think this is a key phrase, has a very high degree of commonality and very significant shared code with Windows 8.
All right, so stop right there.
WOA!
Here's what's interesting.
Yes.
That exact phrasing is very similar to what was just said about Windows Phone 8, which was revealed via a leak last week.
But it was not really true,
very
was
similar.
it? Was it true?
True? Oh, it's all true.
It is true.
Yeah.
So Windows Phone, you're saying Windows Phone 8, not Windows Phone 7.
Right.
Windows Phone 8 will be Windows 8.
So, yes, but go back and reread what you just read and think about it in terms of, instead of saying Windows on ARM, say Windows Phone. Because it does say as with those products. So
as with Windows Phone, yeah.
Phone also builds on the foundation of Windows, has a very high degree of commonality, technical commonality, and a very significant shared code. Actually, I would say technical and user experience commonality, right?
Right.
It's interesting, though, too, that they're drawing a distinction right there between Windows on ARM and Windows 8, what we would think of as Windows on Intel or Intel compatible, right? There's a lot of nuances going on here, and that's, excuse me, just one sentence. You know, and this is the problem. This thing has got to be 10,000 words long or more. I don't even know. I didn't count it either, but it's humongous.
Maybe we should attack this by like each of us saying what we thought the biggest takeaways were from this post, because we both had a chance to read it a couple times, and we're not going to get every subtlety, but I think both of us kind of caught little bits and pieces that we thought was a big deal. Like for me, one of the things I saw was they finally are acknowledging as of today that Windows 8 on ARM is going to ship simultaneously with Windows 8 on x86. We didn't know that for sure till today.
Right.
So that's big news for a lot of people who thought they were going to delay the Windows 8 on ARM part of this until sometime in 2013. No, they're not going to.
It does say that WOA PCs are still under development, but that they do hope to ship them all simultaneously.
By the way, that too is a very interesting admission, because there was an indication, I think it was from a guy from Intel, you may recall last year, where he said there's no such thing as Windows ARM, right? What there is, he said, was versions of Windows that run on different ARM machines. And that sentence sort of corroborates that, right? In other words, we're not creating something called Windows on ARM necessarily, but we are developing versions of Windows 8 that run on ARM, not generally, but on specific machines, right? Those machines are being developed concurrently with Windows on ARM. I mean, it's a little different than Windows, or it may be very different, right? Because anyone can go into a store and buy Windows and install it on an Intel-based PC, but that's not going to be the case with the ARM version.
Also, Metro-style apps in the Windows Store can support both WOA and Windows 8 on x86.
All right, so that actually is not new information.
We knew that. Okay.
We knew that.
Yep.
So if you write once, run everywhere.
Right. That's the point of the WinRT and so.
Yeah. But the part that is different today that we finally have a confirmation of officially is the desktop experience is on Windows 8 on ARM. And you probably remember, Leo, it was like in late December when we had a show, where we were saying the rumor was no desktop on ARM, but there is going to be the desktop on ARM. And, this finally acknowledges that and says, in fact, this is how you're also going to get Office 15. It's going to be through the desktop.
Not just through the desktop, but it apparently included with Windows 8 on ARM, which makes it a lot like Windows Phone, right, where they include Office, or in the old days, Windows CE. If you bought one of those very first Windows CE devices in 1996 or whatever year that was, it came with something that looked like a black and white version of Windows 95, but with pocket versions, as they called them at the time, of Word and Excel and probably Outlook. I don't remember the exact lineup of
It
apps.
sounds like it's the other way around in this case, that Office 15 is architected for both touch and minimized power resource consumption while being fully featured. It sounds like a common Office 15 for both desktop and tablet. Is that right?
Well, okay, yeah. So that is very interesting. And actually, if I were going to pick the one thing in here that was the most dramatic, it's this bit about Office 15. So not only will ARM versions of Windows 8 ship with apparently those Office 15 apps, But also, he has sort of tipped the hand about how they intend to handle these new touch-based devices. In that, one of the theories was, well, maybe they'll have a Metro, front end that will offer a subset of the functionality. And the answer apparently is no. What they're going to have is desktop versions of Office, as always, but that they will be architected to work well on both touch and non-touch machines. So if you have a standard PC, Office 15 will probably look and work a lot like Office does today. And if you have a touch-based machine, such as an ARM tablet, presumably some of the interface elements will be bigger and so forth, so that it will be easier to touch them.
Does that? It sounds like almost a dumbed down Office 15 from the desktop point of view. Like, well, you mean you're going to write this for the tablet?
Well, here's the thing, though. So they have screenshots of Office 15, or rather, they have a video. Rather, I took screenshots of them, but they have a video where they portray Office 15. They've hidden the ribbon, so we can't see what's in what that UI looks like. But as far as the actual applications look, they're the real deal. They're full-featured, high-resolution desktop applications.
But here's the trick in this post, or I should say another area where it opens up a whole bunch of questions. The word included. So,
yes.
Included can mean bundled, right? It can mean free, bundled in, like you get it for free, you buy the tablet. I asked Microsoft, so what do you mean by the word included? We are not specifying whether this means pre-installed, built-in, or has any cost. Okay, so what does it mean then?
Well, I think okay. So it's kind of splitting hairs in a way, but I think regardless of how it's included, I think included is clear that it will be there. You could argue that today
It'll
you
be
could
supported,
buy.
right?
Well, supported and included are different, right? I would say supported and bundled are a lot closer than included and supported.
They also say that Internet Explorer 10 and File Explorer will have a common. Sounds. Yeah. I don't.
That's
you're
not
right.
surprising.
We have to parse this. It's not exactly clear what it means.
Once you know,
there's the desktop. By the way, I'm showing the video, and this is the desktop on ARM of Windows 8. That's desktop.
Right. And it looks just like the Windows 8 desktop.
You've got a File Explorer. You've got thumbnails of the pictures in the Explorer. Exactly like it. You've even got it. I hate to say it. There's not only the taskbar, but you've got the little icons on the right.
Yeah, if you've at Build they handed out those tablets that had they're Intel based, but similar in form factor to how tablets will look that come from ARM. I'm not sure that I would describe the Explorer desktop as being particularly touch friendly, and I think there's a kind of similarity that you can draw between the ribbon in Explorer and the one that's coming in Office 15, and whether or not that kind of thing works particularly well. And I'm actually not so sure it is. Some of the elements are a little bigger to allow you to
but not
tap
much.
them
The start bar looks pretty much the same and all that.
Not much.
Now, I wonder, because Apple decided, and I think Apple's thought a lot about this, as has Microsoft, not to have a desktop at all. There is no Explorer at all in the iPad. In the iPad. There is no Explorer at all. Apple felt, I believe, that they did not want to expose the file system to users at all.
Right, but see, I think the thing that we're going to have to compare Windows 8 to eventually will be some future version of Mac OS 10 where they may or may not further enhance the kind of iOS-ness of that system.
They're certainly moving in that direction. There's no question about that.
Right. So, I think in the sense that Lion sort of leapfrogged over Windows 7 in that approach, Windows 8 is leapfrogging again, and we'll have to see what they do in Mac OS 10, whatever the next version is.
So here's Word 15, which does, as you say, does not have a ribbon. But when
it does. They just hide it. They're hiding it. If you look at the top, you can see it's
black. Yeah. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. But it does have the start menu, and it has the taskbar and the system tray.
See, the one thing I'm seeing people talk about a lot on Twitter who are seeing this video, they're saying, where's Outlook? And everybody's panicking now. There's not going to be Outlook.
There's no Outlook icon. They showed Hotmail, but they didn't show Outlook.
But what they've said is that those particular apps will be included. I'm thinking that Microsoft is getting to the point where they're almost getting ready to give away those core apps. If you think about the Office web apps, those are the exact 4 apps that are in the Office web apps. Yep. And obviously they're not full-featured, but maybe in Office 15 they become more full-featured, and maybe they become the functional equivalent of a starter edition that today is only Word and Excel, but maybe in the future will be those 4 apps. And that's what's included on the ARM version. And maybe most people who buy an Intel-based PC will also have that opportunity to get Office 15 Starter Edition. So this could be a core bit of functionality that's common to all of the free or nearly free versions of Office 15 or whatever. I mean, we have to speculate because, again, that's all we can do at this point. I mean, a lot of questions.
Right. The other point people are making too is, whether this version of Office 15 that's coming with Windows on ARM is going to be the only desktop app that Microsoft allows. Now, I don't think that's the case. There's been rumors that Microsoft's going to have a more restrictive policy for licensing these apps. They're going to have to issue certificates to anybody who wants to do a desktop app for ARM, if any third party. But a few people are reading into this post, Office and Microsoft apps are going to be the only allowed desktop apps on ARM. I don't know that it actually says that.
Yeah, I need to read this again, and unfortunately, that it's going to require a lot of time and effort. But that question has been raised very quickly. If you parse through it, they don't really say anything about the possibility of third-party apps on ARM. That doesn't desktop apps. That doesn't mean they won't exist, like you said. But it it's like design. I mean, sometimes what you leave out is as important as what you leave in, and you have to think they were very precise with this post, and went over it with a fine-tooth comb and so forth. So that may be telling, it may not. Again, our job is to speculate madly in the absence of evidence, so that's what we do. But and of course they may be sitting there laughing because we're even questioning that. Who knows? It's hard to say. They've been so cagey about things so far.
I think reading it, and I'm reading it for the first time. You guys have had a little more time to look at it. It's pretty clear that what they want to do is dispel the notion that was widespread that Windows on ARM would be a tablet OS, a different OS with different applications. They're saying really it's the same. And it's going to have the desktop. It's going to have desktop versions of Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote. It's going to be a, quote, no-compromise product for people who want to have the full benefits of familiar Office productivity software and compatibility, an industry-leading hardware-accelerated web browser, apps from Microsoft. I notice that it does say apps from Microsoft.
That is interesting,
and access to apps in the Windows Store. So they're really. I think, to me, the takeaway from this is that WOA is a full and equal partner with Windows 8.
Okay,
come out at the same time. It's going to have the same apps.
Yeah, I mean, there was evidence to suggest that this would be the case, right? Because they keep saying no compromises, and that's what that says.
And they say they don't need to compromise. Also, they're very clear. There's no penalty for including the desktop.
Okay.
They said that.
there may maybe Office is the reason it's there. Who can say? But I think the side story to this is that regardless of whether you're talking about ARM devices or Intel-based tablets, the truth is that with this version of Windows, Microsoft is concentrating very heavily on touch-based devices of whatever architecture, and that has an amazing impact on the future of the platform. That. In many ways, it seems like they have decided that they're going to have dual interfaces, and that the expectation is that a person with a tablet and no other way of interacting with that machine other than touching it will be using the start screen in the Metro interface by and large. I mean, it doesn't mean the desktop's not there, but that will be most of what they do.
Right. And
that someone who's going to sit down in front of a big desktop PC with a large screen, a keyboard, and a mouse, by and large is going to use the desktop. Because the problem isn't just the interface differences and how one is better suited for the other, but the interaction between these two interfaces is not non-existent, but it's not great. It is a weird shift when you go back and forth. And I'm very curious to see how that works or doesn't work better in the consumer preview than it does in the version I'm currently using. But it is a major question. I don't know how you bridge these two environments in a way that makes any sense. They're two different things running side by side. It's very strange.
Well, in fact, what's interesting... Go ahead, Mary Jo.
I was just going to say, I just stumbled onto something that answers one of our questions. So it looks like Steven Sinofsky gave pre-briefs to a couple of people about this news. One is All Things D, not surprisingly. And here, listen to this. Sinofsky said the only applications that will be allowed to run on the desktop on Windows 8 on ARM is Microsoft Office, nothing else.
Wow.
Yep. So there you go. He said there will be no other compiled desktop apps available. Only everything else will have to be Metro style. Just Office and components of Windows itself from Microsoft will be in the desktop on ARM.
Okay. So the supposition that I made previously that maybe the desktop exists only for Office is, which is
correct.
bizarre.
Does that mean that you would? Well, now, what do you mean? Do you mean that only if you're in Office you'll have a desktop, or that the desktop's there the whole time, but we put it in for Office?
The latter.
The latter. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because you still have the
gonna,
File Explorer. You still have
they're saying you're going to have File
Internet
Explorer.
Explorer.
That's really what. That's what File Explorer is. Really is that is well, not really, but I guess it's a big part of the desktop.
Yeah. So I mean, some third-party developers. Right. So some third-party developers were saying, I might want to do an app for Windows on ARM, but I don't necessarily want to do a Metro app.
Nope. Can't do it. Right.
So this says. Well, okay, I mean, unfortunately, this also raises questions. What if you wanted to do something like write a browser add-in for Internet Explorer? Is that possible? Is that
in HTML5 you could do it? Sure. I mean, they're underscoring this HTML5 compatibility.
No, I mean on the desktop version.
Right. Before they were saying there'd be two versions of IE, right? There was going to be the Metro version and the desktop. And the desktop was going to let you have plugins, but the Metro one wasn't. Remember that whole mess?
No, of course. But how does that work with an
Somebody
ARM-based
doing
system?
an app.
I don't know how they work. I actually don't know technically what those things are, if they're compiled or whatever. But, I mean, how does that work? You're going to extend the browser. I mean, it's something as simple as that. Or, you want a utility that will unzip and zip files, right? This is something you would use. You could extend the shell. Something that's very commonly done today. There was a little bit of a shift. Remember when we went from 32-bit versions of Windows to 64-bit? If you had a shell extension that worked in the 32-bit version of Windows, it couldn't work in 64-bit until you modified it. Doing that was probably a relatively simple thing. So if you were like WinRAR or 7-zip or one of those utilities, simple process. But now what we're saying is you can't do that on ARM. So you are losing functionality when you go to ARM, and that sort of does fly in the face of the notion of no compromises when you think about it in that light. Not that anything they've said ever has been wrong. I'm just throwing that out as an idea.
The question in the chat room has some interesting takes on this. They're wondering, is it hypervisor that allows this to happen? And if that's the case, then there wouldn't be a big porting issue. Or is this
they've said
native?
They've said no emulation, right?
No
emulation allowed on Windows 8 on ARM. Although, do you count a hypervisor as emulation?
Well, by the way, so that's the other thing. So is Hyper-V included in the ARM version of Windows 8? I mean, I have a feeling we're going to discover that there's a subset of Windows 8 that's available on Windows 8 ARM. It's going to be a fairly big one, but I wouldn't be surprised to discover that Hyper-V is one of the things that gets tossed aside. I don't think that the ARM chipset is powerful enough, or maybe even well-known enough, to handle Intel x86 virtualization. But that's just a guess.
8,610 words that we are parsing today. We bring you here to parse 8,610 words in under an hour.
All right, so let's move to paragraph 2, shall we?
Yeah, that was just the first paragraph, kids. He does say you don't turn off a WOA PC, but that's no tablets. But you don't turn off tablets. That's nothing really new.
That's why they got rid of the start button.
Right, right.
So you can't turn it off.
Right. He says, today we're familiar with the PC experience where hardware that runs Windows built on x86 adheres to a set of technical specs that allows one distribution of code to install and run on a wide variety of PCs. That's not going to change for Windows 8.
By the way, I'm sorry, and then in that next paragraph, he talks about the different ARM devices and how what you just said, that ARM Holding has sort of a reference design, and these guys do their own thing.
Right.
I wonder if this is going to say...
He's basically saying commonality across devices can occur under the hood, but is not applicable or significant to consumers. End users are technically restricted from installing a different OS. He's kind of warning people that don't put your Linux on this thing. And it's rarely supported by the device makers. Device makers work with ARM partners to create a device that's strictly paired with a specific set of software, and consumers purchase the complete package.
This does suggest that every single ARM-based device running Windows 8 will, in some small way, be different from every other one.
Yes.
You know, that they almost have to be custom designed for that particular system.
Yeah.
That's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, in the Android world, we would call it fragmentation. And it really changes the way that Microsoft supports this product.
Well, they say, though, he says in the next paragraph, at the same time, we're making a commitment to customers that WOA will be consistent in capabilities, experience, and baseline performance. But you know, baseline doesn't mean whether there's a camera, what kind of camera. I mean, there's a lot of things that are varied in tablets. The specifications being implemented for WOA allow for more diversity across many dimensions, combined with the same commitment to engineering and blah, blah, blah. Same OS binaries. This is interesting. Same OS binaries across all WOA PCs.
People have been asking about, you know, who's going to get these WOA tablets? Like, is anybody going to get them when the consumer preview comes out at the end of February? And the answer is some people are going to get them, but it sounds like a pre-selected group, invite only. There's not many of them, and so don't expect you're one of them. I know I'm not one of them, but it's a very hand-picked group of developers.
It's developers.
Yeah. Developers, a few customers. I don't know if any press will get them. Probably some friends.
Ina Fried might. Boy, Ina got that. That
FOS. Friends of
Sinofsky. She was on TNT yesterday. She's a sly cove. She didn't mention this at all, and obviously is already working on it. Cool. Very interesting. Why they don't talk to our friends, Mary Jo Foley and Paul Thurrott.
I know why they don't talk to me. Paul, I don't understand.
This is you know, much of the 8,000 words is really devoted to very specific descriptions of things like getting to the start screen, connected device services. It's going to be a tablet OS, very specifically designed for, you know, that same kind of tablet experience. Although there is a big shot of something that looks a lot more like a phone than a tablet.
Right.
He says this is not a product plan or even a hint at a product.
I love the the Explorer-based version of Task Manager running on this thing. This is just what I want on my phone.
Yeah. With, by the way, it looks like Windows NT styling. I like that.
Yeah.
So this is obviously a build prototype.
Yeah,
it even says Windows 7 build, whatever. But that's a phone, and I think there's a reason why it's a phone, not a tablet. I mean, I think he is kind of saying this is across all hardware platforms, right? Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, there's some corroboration in here about the Windows Phone stuff, absolutely.
And I'm so glad to see that I can run Solitaire, OS NT style Solitaire. Right over top of the dialing.
But can you run that DOS-based donkey game? Remember that thing?
QBasic. I want QBasic. Come on now. Come on now. So let's. Is this complete? Can we move to the consumer preview, which Mary Jo's kind of leaked a little bit?
No, I mean, these two things are all connected, right?
It is connected. Here's the thing. Yeah. Previously, it was detailed that WOA will not support any type of virtualization or emulation and will not enable existing x86 64 apps to be ported or run. So you got to write right to the WOA. Bear to the WOA. And that is, I think, Microsoft saying, look, we want them to be responsive. We want this stuff to look like it's designed for this platform.
Sure.
But that is a shift from Microsoft, which always had the very strong core belief that everything ever written for Windows ever should run.
It's a gross generalization, but I sort of do believe that the desktop is only there for Office. That's essentially it.
And that's why they're saying that. They're really kind of, I think, foreshadowing. They're warning, in effect, that people should not expect their legacy apps to run on WOA of any kind. Is that right?
Well, they won't.
They won't. And don't expect us to do anything to help you.
Yep.
And this to me also explains why there were those rumors that Paul heard back in December about there wasn't going to be a desktop. I mean, I bet there was some back and forth. Should we have a desktop if we're only going to let it run our own apps? Or should we just say, nah, we don't need a desktop?
And there'll be no WinXP version, WinXP support built into WOA or any of that stuff. We're moving on, kids. WOA PCs will be serviced only through Windows or Microsoft Update, and consumer apps will only come from the Windows Store. So you never have to worry if a program will run. Because you are not downloading or installing from a DVD outside the store experience.
Because nothing you've ever downloaded from Microsoft has ever not worked properly.
The new refresh and reset functionality will be available on WOAs, which is, I think that's great. That means that thing that we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago will be also on a tablet or a phone experience. You could start over, clean install. I like that. So next steps is the consumer.
Yeah. So the thing is, from a matter of perspective, the next following topics here were stuff we had in here from before. So now,
we stopped the presses.
In some ways, we've
let them roll.
Answered some of the questions we have. So it's still interesting to go through this because now we do have some of the answers, but of course we have further questions.
Oh yeah, this is good. But before we move on, on balance, is this A, unexpected, B, good or bad news? Paul?
Well, it's mostly very good news. It's mostly as expected. There's obviously the Office stuff was unexpected and is good. I still need to really go through this again with a fine-tooth comb because I really don't feel that any words were chosen haphazardly and that there's almost hidden meaning to some of that stuff.
A lot of parsing.
So I'll be doing that, and I'm sure Mary Jo will as well. But I would say it's mostly good news. The big question I have, and will always have, is why the frick did they wait so long to say this? There is no valid reason to have not explained this a month ago, 2 months ago, 6 months ago. It just doesn't make any sense, aside from maybe the Office stuff, which doesn't really even matter. I mean, I just don't understand why they were so cagey about this.
Right.
I never will.
Mary Jo?
I have to second that. I have to second that because I think, by letting all the rumors percolate as long as they did, they really hurt customers and partners and software developers who, were trying to figure it out. Hey, is our app going to run on ARM? Is it not going to run on ARM? Can we do a desktop app? I mean, I understand the desire for secrecy on unannounced things, as I've said many times, but on things where they kind of already announced them, like they did Windows 8 on ARM at Build, I just don't understand why they couldn't have clarified, what do we mean when we say desktop on Windows 8 on ARM? What do we mean when we say your app has to be such and such a way? I think they could have done this way earlier.
Right.
Yeah, very, very frustrating. Jerks.
Well, I'm just trying to think. Why wouldn't they? Is it because they didn't know? Is it because
maybe things changed, right? Maybe that was a battle. Yeah, well, should we do the desktop? Not do the desktop? If it was because of changes and uncertainties, then okay.
Right, and then that would have been a perfectly valid thing to say. Is we're still debating how this is.
We're not sure.
No, they don't want to show that weakness. That's a weakness. You don't want to show a weakness. Yep. You want to say
deliberating is not a weakness. I just don't. I just don't. Like I said, I'll never understand.
So
I just don't get it.
If I am, I don't know, QuickBooks. If I'm a third party creating software now for Windows 7.
Yep.
What is my? And I would love to run on WOA. because I want to run everywhere Microsoft is. I mean, that's maybe QuickBooks is a bad example. Let's pick something that would Photoshop, perfect. Adobe Photoshop or Premiere Elements or something like that.
Yep.
I want to run on WOA. I really do, and I want to run on desktop. What do? I have to re-architect.
You're out of luck.
I'm out of luck.
Yep. You're out of luck. You can't run on the desktop if you're a third party.
Yeah, unless there's something we're
not
missing
on the
here.
WOA desktop. So I have to write a Metro app.
Well,
do I write a Metro app and a desktop app? What do I do?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there are capabilities on Windows Phone, for example, where developers can today use native code, not just the managed code stuff that Microsoft gives out to everybody. You have to partner with Microsoft to do that. You have to work closely with them and so forth. That may change. Actually, that will change in the future. But today, that's how that works.
But this is, by the way, exactly how it works on tablets. I mean, you don't write code for OS X that you port right over to the iPad. You have to write separate apps. That's normal.
Except that the environment is almost exactly the same.
Well, that's a little confusing.
So why can't we just recompile? I suppose there are APIs that are missing that haven't been ported over. I'm not really sure, but perhaps Microsoft will have a program where some of their major partners, like Adobe would be a great example, can work with them to make a WOA version of Photoshop or whatever that runs on the desktop.
It does look a little dog in the manger, like, hey, we can develop for WOA, but not you.
Isn't this kind of though this is like Windows Phone, right? Isn't it like some apps were allowed to be native in the end, even though supposedly nobody?
Oh yeah, no, there
was
are many.
going to be?
Actually, there are many native apps on Windows Phone. Yeah. Yep.
Right. So maybe there will be exceptions, right?
That's what I'm thinking. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Not
we haven't then heard the whole story.
Well, of course, that's the problem, right? So, as they give, they also take away, Leo. This is,
and as they take away, they also apparently could give, but you don't know. Where you could, do you think Microsoft's having behind the curtains conversations with big companies at this point to say, well, look, this is what our roadmap is, and here's what
they have to have already had these conversations.
Otherwise, you ship without key apps, frankly.
Yep. Well, and you create this kind of bifurcated market where a Windows 8 Intel tablet is a real Windows 8 machine that can run Photoshop.
That's an issue, isn't it?
And the other Office apps that aren't going to be ported to ARM, perhaps.
That's a big point.
And then you have like the junior version, the kind of Fisher-Price version that can run some basic apps and nothing more than that.
Right.
So, I have to think they've talked. I don't know. We don't know. This is the problem. We have to say we don't know a lot anytime we talk about Windows 8, which is frustrating.
Well, given the fact that the Windows 8 consumer preview is imminent, and we're going to get to that in a second. Does that mean how imminent is Windows 8? I mean, the consumer preview, isn't this the last beta?
They said this year, and I think the fourth quarter of this year would be the logical time. By the way, I think Mary Jo would agree with this. The inclusion, if you will, assuming that's how it is, of Office 15 apps, 4 of them in the ARM version of Windows 8, does not mean that Office 15 will ship at that time, by the way, right? I mean, that could still ship months later, just because those 4 apps are ready to go in ARM.
So we're going to see the WCP, as long as we're going acronym, let's just go acronym. W8CP, or WACP, will be coming out February 29th in Barcelona. Now, this is a good excuse to go to Barcelona.
Yeah, well, interestingly.
They told us so late.
Yeah, this is like
yesterday.
This is 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
3 weeks
20 days. 20 days from yesterday. 3 weeks from yesterday.
I looked it up. It would be very expensive to go to Barcelona at the last minute, but I'm willing to do it if that's all I have to do. So the first question I asked was, this is very interesting and everything, but you're going to have a U.S. event too, not just something in Barcelona.
Is this part of the Windows Mobile?
Yes.
Well, what is it called? The World Mobile Congress.
Mobile World Congress.
Mobile World Congress.
It is happening at exactly the same time. It appears to not be physically at the same place.
It's telling, by the way, that they decide to do this at what is traditionally a cell phone show, a mobile phone.
Yes, it is. So also further hinting at the ties between Windows Phone 8 and Windows 8, and we already knew that Sanofsky was going to be at the show, so it makes sense that I should say it doesn't make sense that the Windows 8 consumer preview event for press would occur at this show because not everyone is going to this show.
Right. Only cell phone reporters.
Yeah.
I'm kicking myself because we were going to go. Because I just lost Barcelona.
I will be in Barcelona the week before.
Oh, Paul,
on vacation.
Well, just stay, baby.
It's like 7 days before. So
the paella there is fabulous.
Worth staying a week.
I can't eat rice, Leo.
No, don't tell me. Tell me that's not so.
Oh,
really?
Right.
Oh, Paul. So you don't. Well, they make paella with noodles.
All right,
too.
let's not lose the focus here.
I'm sorry.
The point is,
you said paella.
He's getting hungry.
The rice is
He's getting hungry.
the issue. So I asked them if they were going to have a U.S. event, and they're not. But they are going to be doing briefings with press and so forth.
Are they having a Barcelona event?
Yes, they're having a 2-hour reviewers workshop on February 29th.
I actually think it's a 2-hour party. I don't think it's a reviewers workshop.
Well, that's a big difference.
That is a big difference.
You know
I
why?
wouldn't go to Barcelona for a party. Right. I can tell you that.
I think it is. I think it's like a launch event. This is my guess. Like, how they do these launch events that are kind of orchestrated and they do some demos. And
that's a very different thing.
I don't think it's going to be a reviewers workshop.
I
don't think it is.
I understand Paul wants to be, if it's a reviewers workshop where there's technical details revealed.
I feel very strongly that they need to have an event just like the one they had at Build, but for the beta or consumer preview. It has been a long time, and I'd like to really have a detailed analysis of what has changed, how close this is to the final, what changes we can expect in the future, what the roadmap looks like, et cetera, et cetera. This is all the types of things that would be a wonderful day-long event that should be happening but isn't for some reason. So,
let me guess. They're not saying.
How did you guess?
Well, it's...
Let me guess. Well, they haven't said. All right, well, let's take a break, and I'm going to let Paul stew and have some rice. And we'll come back. We'll talk about what they will say, what will be going on. The consumer preview of Windows 8, 20 days away. That's pretty exciting. There's lots more to talk about. Paul Thurrott from the SuperSite for Windows is here. Mary Jo Foley, as always. We're talking Windows. Man, I missed you guys. Glad to be back. Thanks to Ayaz Akhtar for filling in for me last week. And I know he does a better job than I do, but I don't care because I like this show and I'm going to continue to do it. So there. Meanwhile, this portion of our program brought to you by our good friends at Carbonite. Next week, I'm having dinner with the CEO of Carbonite, David Friend. If you have some thoughts about things, features you'd like to see, send me an email because I will carry them, hand carry your thoughts about Carbonite. Let me tell you what it is for those of you who haven't tried it yet. I know many of you have. It's the backup solution for Macs and Windows machines. You could try it free for 15 days. Just go to carbonite.com and use our offer code WINDOWS. By the way, when you do that and you decide to buy, you get 2 months bonus with your purchase, 14 months at the price of 12. So here's what happens. You download it. Do this. You can do this right now. Carbonite.com. Use the offer code Windows. Before I'm done talking, you'll have it installed, and it's immediately backing up. Whenever you're online, it's backing up. You do want broadband. The nice thing is, though, because it uses SSL, you can go to a coffee shop and securely back up your data. Once that full first backup's done, and usually that's within 15 days, obviously if you got 8,000 terabytes, it's not going to happen that fast. But a normal size internal hard drive, you're going to get that full backup done in the first 15 days. That's kind of why they give it to you for free. And now you can decide, do I want to stay with Carbonite? If you do, use Windows again, you get 14 months for $59. It's less than $5 a month, even without the offer code. Continuous backup of your data. When there's a change made, boom. It does versioning, yes. It's encrypted, and you could further encrypt it, so it's totally private if you decide. You have access to your data at any time, so it's also cloud storage. You log in with your Windows phone, your BlackBerry, any smartphone, tablet, or on a computer, and there's your stuff available for you. So it's like SkyDrive, but it's unlimited size. And when you need to restore, simple. Great way to upgrade. Let's say you're getting ready to go to Windows 8. All you'll do is you'll get a new computer. You just move your Carbonite account. You log in over on the new computer and restore, and that's it. And all your data's there again. You could not find a better, easier, more effective way to back up. You got to have an off-site automatic backup strategy. Carbonite's it. Carbonite.com. Use the offer code Windows. Try it free for 15 days. I know there are other choices. You can try them too. Go ahead. Do they have free trials? Go ahead. Try them. I know you want to try them. You should. You need a backup strategy, and Carbonite is it as far as I'm concerned. Carbonite.com. Offer code Windows. Paul Thurrott, Mary Jo Foley. We're talking about Windows. Got him and caught you drinking. We should have a drinking game.
I don't like that Carbonite has carbs in it.
You want paleoite. I want proteinite. Okay, so the consumer preview, will that run on a? Will there? So the tablet, you guys got it built. Can you put it on that? I presume you can. Yeah.
Yeah, this will work on any Intel
tab. It will not be ARM.
7 type computer. No ARM.
No ARM.
No.
Will there be? Well, I guess we kind of don't know. We asked, will there be ARM tablets at this event? We don't know.
At the event, I could see that happening, but we don't know. Yeah,
well, developers need, if you're going to develop for ARM.
Developers will not need ARM tablets, from what I can tell, other than to test their Metro-style apps to make sure they work properly.
Oh, that's interesting. So you'll write on the desktop, simulate it.
No, it's the same code will work on ARM and Intel. It won't matter, right, for a Metro-style app.
Right.
Oh,
yeah, so if you do a Metro-style app, you write it once, and it's going to be designed to run on Intel-based Windows 8 machines or ARM. Supposedly, you aren't going to have to change it if it's a Metro app. Like, it just is going to work.
Strong incentive, then. Is this intentional to move to ARM? Or to move to Metro, I should say. Yeah.
To move to WinRT, which we're going to talk about later.
Yeah.
Strong incentive. I mean, if you're a developer, anything that will save you time and get you on multiple platforms. Is the code base feature complete in 20 days? Are they going to be ready then?
They should be largely feature complete, but also a question. We don't know.
Unknown.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can ask more unknown questions. I got a list of them.
So could we.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was there anything up in the air? I thought this was all...
I know. We were doing a list like, what do we and don't we know? The do list is still way, way shorter than the don't know list.
Do you think, well, here's one I know our chat room would like to know. When can they try it? Does consumer preview mean consumers get it?
Oh, yeah. No, everyone's going to get it. It's public. The question is whether it ships on the 29th or before the 29th. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually happened before that.
I think certainly our audience, I would say, total, everybody who listens to this show will want to run it. Yeah. They're calling it the consumer preview. It's not the technical user preview. You have to be a power user. Yeah, it's named that way for a reason. So you should be able to run it on any machine that's running Windows 7. Of course, will run Windows 8. They say even better. How about tablets? There really aren't a lot of Intel tablets out. I guess there are.
No, there aren't.
Yeah, you can run it on that.
Run it on that.
If you can find one, you can.
If you can find it, you can run it. Okay, good.
And it's funny because it's like, okay, so who's going to download this? And, are people who going to find out, are they going to put it on their own laptops? Question, and are they going to try to use it with a mouse and a keyboard? Question. How's that going to work?
Right.
Any better than the developer preview works? We don't know yet.
I got one for you, Paul. Can I put it on my Mango?
No.
Oh.
No, you cannot.
Oh. Eventually, though, maybe. But you don't think
that's an interesting topic. So that's sort of a Windows Phone topic. Will Windows Phone 8 run on a Mango phone?
Right.
I've heard really good arguments for both pro and con on that one.
What would the issue be? Performance?
Well, yes.
These are single core.
Yep. So Windows Phone 8 will support dual core.
Drivers. And drivers support, right?
Drivers, yeah.
That's always a problem in the mobile space. I mean, these are, that's kind of what he was saying about the tablets. Each of these is a unique and special flower.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in that case, there's someone protecting them from getting upgraded, right? I mean, wireless carriers have a reason not to want you to upgrade it because they need to support that for one thing.
Right.
They'd rather have you buy a new phone. So my gut feeling is it won't happen. But I've heard good arguments in both directions.
Right.
And we also still don't know, by the way, in Barcelona, will they admit publicly that Windows Phone 8, aka Apollo, is going to have the Windows 8 core? We don't know yet if they're going to say that. And you know what? I actually would bet they are not. Even though
before this week, I would have thought they would have never said anything about Windows Phone 8 at Mobile World Congress. But there's been so much information, they almost have to play their hand. It's very strange.
Right.
But this is going to kill. This is going to kill them if they have to talk about Windows Phone 8.
So that's actually a topic worthy of debate too, when you think about it. So obviously, in our circles, and if you go on Twitter or this podcast, people listen to this and so forth. You hear that Windows Phone 8 is going to be based on Windows 8, essentially a new architecture. Obviously, the backwards app compatibility, which is nice, but very serious questions about whether an existing phone will be able to run it. And even if they can, why would you want a single-core machine now when you can get a dual-core machine in the fall? And so people are saying, well, I'm not going to buy a Windows Phone. I'm going to wait. But I don't know that that is the case for most people. Most people who are finding out about Windows Phone now through Nokia ads and so forth.
Nobody listens to this is normal. All right, go ahead.
No, I don't mean it like that. But I mean, there's going to be a lot of advertising this year around Windows Phone 7.5, around those Nokia phones and so forth. This will be the first time I think a lot of people are going to walk into a store and maybe even ask about it, want to see it. And, the fact that something is going to come and replace it is, that's all technology. I mean, you could buy an iPad 2 right now, but it's going to be replaced in March or April probably. It doesn't negate the fact that that machine's still useful. Well, not an iPad is not really that useful, but just as an example, that you can still get use out of it. And a Windows Phone 7.5 machine right now could last you for years. It'd be great. It will be updated over time with new stuff and new apps and all that. I mean, it's not a complete dead end. So I don't know. Maybe it's not a big deal. I think it is, but I mean, in my circles, it's a big deal. But maybe to the wider world,
to real people, yeah.
Maybe not.
Well, there's a lot of this. It's not a big deal to real people,
right?
Everything we're talking about. Is,
I think real people are just realizing the Windows Phone exists.
Are they still blathering about this thing?
I mean, seriously, I think we had I've had more experience now with the Lumia 900, and I think that is going to be an important announcement. I don't think Microsoft wants to overshadow Nokia's move to Windows Phone.
Well, it's such a delicate
So think
time,
about the
too.
timing.
Right.
Think about this timing,
it's the
right?
same time.
It's like 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
Are you going to be 2 weeks before you launch Nokia Lumia 900 in the U.S. on AT&T? Are you going to go out there and say, "Hey, guess what? We have this other version coming"?
Yeah.
Windows
Pay no
Phone
attention.
8.
It would be
that ad
huge.
where the guy bought the computer.
Yeah.
And then driving it home in his car, he saw the billboard for the next version of the computer.
It'd be a huge mistake.
It would be like that.
Yeah. So I think, if anything, they downplay Phone 8 completely. Apollo should not be on anyone's lips at this point, which makes it odd that they're doing this at Mobile World Congress, where
maybe they have a story where they can say, "Hey, actually, we are going to support upgrades." So there's no reason to wait.
Interesting.
That kind of thing.
That would be awesome.
That's the only reason I would do it. But so, do you think this means? See, I don't think.
Do I think that's going to happen?
No, we can't give Microsoft that much credit.
No, I'm just saying it's a possibility. Pigs could fly too, Leo. It's a possibility.
It could happen.
I've not seen it happen, but
it could happen.
Yeah.
Well,
and the other thing we have to remember, like, how do things work at Mobile World Congress, right? Like, so there's the part the public sees, the announcements, the press conferences, and all that, and then in the back rooms is where the real stuff is happening, right? So this is where all the carriers and all the handset makers are having private meetings with Microsoft, where Microsoft shows them Apollo and says, "You're under NDA," right? So I think you have to remember both of these things are happening there. So, for the team to go there, it's not completely out of the question, even if they don't announce it. Like, there could be things happening in the back room that makes sense for them to be there.
I expect to find out about that because I'm really curious. Whatever happens, this is kind of an amazing show because of what's happened here. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing, too, is we sort of know, or at least assume, that the focus of Microsoft's public talk would probably be about their strategy to expand the market for Windows Phone through this Tango product, which is really low-end version or low-end phones targeting emerging markets, which really flies in the face of the Windows 8 strategy, which is like dual-core behemoth machines that are really fast and powerful. Setting up a future, I think, where we're going to have two different kinds of Windows phones. We're going to have the ones that run in emerging markets, and then the really nice ones that run in France, the United States, and Canada, or whatever. But that is a story right there. I mean, that's going to have to happen in some capacity. It would be odd if that was all that Microsoft said about Windows Phone, because ultimately that's not as interesting as, hey, we're launching a new version of our mobile product called Windows Phone, or last year what they had, hey, we're coming out with a new version called Mango. There was an interesting story both times, about the last couple of years. So this particular, the Tango stuff is not very interesting. I'd have to think there's going to be something Windows Phone 8 in there, just something,
It's a careful balance they have to hew. You don't hew a balance. It's a careful line they have to toe.
Hew a balance.
Hew a balance. Mixing the metaphorical. I still think it's very fascinating that they're doing this at Mobile World Conference. The semiotics of it is just puzzling.
I know.
It's very puzzling. I don't get it. But we'll find out. It's good. It makes me mad because we're weighing whether to go to Barcelona this year. I think we will next year. Almost certainly we'll go next year. And we just decided it was too soon to go this year. We weren't ready. Dang. Dang. What about apps in the store? Do you think that they will stock the store as one might throw trout into a pond before the big opening day?
Yeah,
what was this about?
There'll be some apps in the store, for sure. There'll be some trout in there.
They'll throw some trout in the store. What do you think they'll have besides Evernote?
Well, so they're having this contest right now called the First Apps Contest, where they've got people building some Windows 8 apps. So the winners are going to be in the store, whoever wins. And I talked to a few of the people building apps, and they're building a lot of games, not surprisingly. So I think there'll be a lot of games. I think we'll see some of the things that we saw, when they showed Windows 8 at CES. So that, people who looked at and really kind of examined the screenshots of what they showed there were some things we haven't seen yet, like the camera app and Microsoft Music, whatever that is, and those kind of things. I bet those sample things like that could be maybe in the store, prototypes of those consumer-ish apps.
Do you think we're going to have a problem, though, with Windows 8, just as we do in Windows Phone, where we're way behind, in this case, the iPad or even Android tablets in some ways? Here we'll be a year from now, we'll finally be getting Angry Birds or something. Are we always going to be like this backwater where, the stuff that was out of the other platform finally shows up on Windows? I mean, I don't know that their contention that Windows is like the biggest software ecosystem makes a lot of sense when that thing that you're really talking about is a brand new platform, not Windows as we know it. And I don't know that that's inherently very interesting. In other words, cut the rope type games are cute, but is this the future of Windows? That we're gonna, I'm waiting for the next Angry Birds or the next Need for Speed game that I can tilt the tablet and race the car. I mean, we already have things that do that. To me, it seems like we need unique stuff. Similar to what they do on the Xbox 360, where they've done a great job of having exclusive franchises like Gears of War, or franchises that exist on other platforms where we get stuff first on the Xbox, like in the case with Call of Duty, where a lot of the add-on levels and the things that come out after the game is shipped happen first on the Xbox 360. I hope there's more to what's happening with this App Store and these new Metro-style apps than just it's going to be like the iPad, but it's Windows, as far as apps are concerned.
Yeah. The part that I think is interesting to think about is how much Microsoft in the past year has tried to position itself as a consumer company, right? And get away from people thinking about it as they still make most of their money on the enterprise. They're playing up all these things like, here are the cool games we're building, and here's Kinect, and, here's the consumerization of IT story, and everybody's bringing their devices to work, and they want to be able to do Pinterest on it at the same time as they do SharePoint.
Yeah, so what's like the enterprise story is like the sound of a cricket chirping,
It is.
It's just, other than obviously it has everything that Windows 7 had, and there are some improvements along the lines of business-oriented capabilities, of course, Secure Boot and so forth, Hyper-V, whatever. But it's not, the jump from Windows 7 to Windows 8 from a business perspective is not any greater than the jump from Vista to 7. I mean, it might even be less. It's not a huge leap, I guess is what I'm saying. So they're spending a lot of time to attract this new audience, which they may or may not attract, possibly to the detriment of the audience that has been the most faithful to them.
And I'll be honest, I don't think it's that important that they have a giant number of apps in the store. They're not really, I don't know, are they selling this via apps or are they selling it as Windows? You don't have to prove that Windows is going to have apps when it comes out. That's a given.
Except that when they don't, that's going to be a huge news story.
But that's a story not for now, but for 6 months from now or whenever it comes out, right? I mean, it's not now.
Right, but I mean, the last thing you need at the launch of a new version of Windows is some disaster along the lines
of
right, exactly. Right. I mean, they're really good apps, but.
Right. And you got to be thinking like, okay, they're nervous about iPad gaining more and more traction in the enterprise, right? And so if your device that you're pitting primarily against the iPad is a Windows 8 ARM tablet, and now we find out it can't run any kind of apps other than Metro apps, that makes you, as a business user, go,
So the smart strategy would be then to go out and get all the enterprise apps, or at least some major enterprise apps in there. Get some CRM, get some BI. I'm just thinking of the acronyms.
But you can see how there are so many questions still, right? Anytime, it's very exciting that they talked about this. I don't want to beat to death the fact that they should have done this months ago, although they should have. But whatever. I'm happy they did it. But yet, once again, it raises so many more questions. It's not infuriating. It's frustrating.
Right.
I'm looking for clarity, of course, but
just okay. I'm going to throw you something really out of the left field. ReFS is that going to be on on ARM?
On ARM?
No.
Well, no, because it's only on server.
It's only on server. Okay.
Eventually, possibly.
It'll probably be able to read ReFS.
It may not matter.
How about remote desktop? You would want remote desktop on.
Yeah, it is on there, and actually they showed that in the video.
Okay, so that's important. That's important.
Yep.
But is it only the the Metro version of remote desktop, or is the desktop version available as well, which is more powerful in my mind? We don't know. Kill me.
You mentioned this in your notes, and I think it is a great question, and I'm sure that people are thinking this right now. Don't they tell you anything ahead of time? Are you not? Don't you guys really know more than you can say? Come on, tell the truth. You know more. You really know. They're just pretending.
Leo, I know less than I say. No, it depends, of course.
So you do have some NDAs.
NDAs are far in between these days.
Are a funny thing.
It's not. Well, no, it's not like the old days, right? In the old days, you would literally sign a piece of paper and mail it back in some cases, or fax it back, or whatever. We don't do a lot of that. I don't do a lot of that these days. It comes up from time to time. I don't have any problem when someone from Microsoft or one of their PR companies comes to me and says, "Look, we can talk about this," but they'll say this is under NDA. There's no real signing of an NDA, but of course, you agree to those things. It's fine. I would say over the last 6 months or so, though, that most of the information that I've gotten that has been, before the public release of that information has come on the side, as it does so often, from people at Microsoft or close to Microsoft who, for whatever reason, like what I do and know that I'm enthusiastic about whatever it may be, Windows 8 or Windows Phone 8 or whatever, and they provide me with information. I get a lot of information from people I don't know very well and I can't necessarily trust. And I try when I communicate what I've been told, whether it's about that desktop rumor on ARM and how some months ago, I don't remember when, I was saying that it was not going to happen. In that case, I can't vouch for that person necessarily as much as, say, some of the other stuff. So, I've gotten a lot of good Windows Phone information lately. That stuff is absolutely rock solid. I know it's true. It just depends on what it is. So I think people assume that we know more. Officially, I don't have.
Well, they just figure, as I think they would probably about anybody who for whom you are on the Microsoft beat, that somehow. And I think actually you've been pretty clear about this in the past, but just to fill it in, is that somehow you have you get special behind the scenes briefings, and Mary Jo has basically said they hate her, so we know she knows nothing.
Well, okay, but hold on. I supposedly they hate her. I would say
no. She's got great sources. She's got fantastic.
Right, there are many
sources.
people who like her quite a bit, and obviously Mary Jo has excellent sources,
which makes it in some ways easier for her to talk about what she knows and doesn't know, because these sources are all coming to her unofficially.
You know what Microsoft doesn't understand?
I wanted to talk about this because I think a lot of our listeners don't actually know this, and it's kind of like journalism insider baseball, right?
But it's fascinating.
It is kind of fascinating, and I think it's good for people to know, especially as we get further into Windows 8. When you start seeing things just show up, you're like, okay, was this person briefed? Are they guessing? Right?
What do you know? What don't you know?
Well, like today, right? So today, Microsoft posts this big post on Windows 8 on ARM. So at 1 p.m. today, when I saw it go up, I said to Paul, wow, they just posted this big thing on ARM. Neither of us were under NDA. Neither of us knew anything about this coming.
So, by the way, before you say this, though,
now I start looking around, and there were people who were under NDA on this. And the way you can
which
tell,
is a little infuriating,
listeners,
actually. Well, no,
the
but
way you
before
can tell that, listeners.
Okay. Well, wait a minute. Let Mary Jo finish. Because I know what she's going to.
No, just because there's a piece that you left out. I don't know if you did that on purpose, but you contacted me before the announcement.
Yeah,
said.
So because sometimes your source will say to you, hey, be ready. There's going to be something, but you don't know what.
Right.
Like, okay, something big is going to happen today.
Something's coming.
That could mean anything.
Yeah.
Right.
The Mayans were right.
Right. But so today, if you notice, there were a few people who went up at 1 p.m. exactly on the dot with a post quoting Steven Sinofsky with all these extra details. Right. So listeners, if you see that, it means they were under NDA and they were pre-briefed. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like sometimes I get pre-briefed like that, and Paul does too. And it's just good for you to know, like, because people have been in my comments lately complaining and saying,
how come you haven't written about this
I don't like it that Microsoft's... Or they'll be like, why can't you tell us everything you know?
Right.
So-and-so knows this, and you don't. Right. It's like, well, this is why, right?
So Ina Fried, as an example, all things D. There's no way you write a 2,000, 5,000-word article in 12 minutes. Ina Fried obviously has been writing this article for several days, and that was the point I made when I said, "Hey, she's a clever cove because she was on TNT yesterday and said nothing." Meanwhile, obviously, she had been writing it probably for several days, right? And had certainly been briefed before today by Steven. So, yeah, but that's the way it is in journalism.
It is,
and
if you want to be briefed, you have to honor that, right? So if somebody tells me something under NDA, even if you ask me, I can't tell you.
And there is and this is why, by the way, I don't do NDAs or I don't even do embargoes. I say when you got a product, let me know. When you could speak publicly, let me know. And that's partly because I'm not a working stiff. I don't write, so I don't have any lead time.
I would have accepted an NDA and said nothing about any of this stuff.
Well, you're right. You should.
I would have for this because this is too core to what I do and it's too important. And I find the whole KJ thing to be silly. But, they don't. I don't know why they don't work this way. There's also a weird inconsistency. I don't want to call it any particular Microsoft groups. I don't mean this in a critical way, but it's fascinating to me and strange that I'm going to make up a group because it's not this group. I'll just make up a group like MSN because it wasn't MSN. But imagine, because this happens to me all the time, that a PR person working on MSN will contact me and say, hey, we're going to do this post about this topic. Would you like to talk to this guy ahead of time? And I'll say, yes, of course I would. And I talk to him for half an hour and I take copious notes and I write an article based on it. I do what Mary Jo was just describing where I set this thing up to publish at a particular time. And it does. And then 2 days goes by and then MSN makes another announcement about something that's even more important than what I just wrote about. And they never mentioned it to me ahead of time, ever. In fact, they didn't officially contact me at all. And I think, well, that's really strange. These guys are kind of schizophrenic. And then 3 or 4 more days go by, and then they make another announcement, which they also have not told me about in advance. But this time, for some reason, they actually think to email me to say, oh, by the way, I don't know if you saw this, but we just put up this blog post. And so here you have this group. It's not MSN. I just use MSN as an example. But you have this happens all the time where you get an almost schizophrenic set of communications or lack of communications from the PR people. And you never know why. You never know why sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And that kind of stuff it also contributes, I think, to the aggravation that can come with this kind of a job. Right. It's very strange.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing, too, because I think this is something good for readers to know and listeners to know. Sometimes the reason, and I know there are people who are dead set against NDAs, and they say, I don't want to take them because it just makes my life easier. If I never take them, it's better. But sometimes the reason they give you an NDA is when a topic is incredibly complicated. And I've had a couple teams at Microsoft give me NDAs because they've just said to me basically, okay, we need somebody to explain this for everyone else because we know we're doing a terrible job of explaining it.
Good.
And
Good.
So, yeah, isn't that awesome? Yeah.
So,
awesome, that's another reason people give and take NDAs sometimes. It's not always just to be first. Sometimes it's to be more thorough and clearer.
And I really admire that on both sides. There's always I think a little bit of presumption when you do a lot of inside stuff and a lot of inside sources that somehow you're kind of a pet, a tamed member of the press, right?
Yep.
And so that's another reason to avoid it. But I do think that if a company is smart enough to realize that a journalist is going to be useful for them in translating into English a complex story, and to give that journalist a special access to help them do that, I think that's admirable on all quarters.
A lot of those people, I don't think, understand the role that we play. Some people want us to be that kind of a cheerleader person and are happy when we are perceived to be doing that. If we write something positive,
well, that's something that's changed. That's changed in the blogging, in the post, the post New York Times world. The blogging / podcast world is now everything is team sports, and they want you to be a fan. And then, and I wonder if, for both of you, if the Microsoft's attitude has changed just a little bit because you do a blog or a podcast.
It's all over the map. Again, it really varies from group to group. I think one of the things I'll just address semi-directly, I've gotten a lot of good Windows Phone information over the past couple of months, and I've certainly known about stuff before it was announced. I have been interested to see some of it not be announced. I've sat on information purposely because, for example, if you think about the Windows Phone 8 stuff, that's obviously very explosive. It ended up being leaked by some kind of a mobile blog pocket now. I don't know how they came across what they got. But, that's the type of thing I sort of respect the situation. And rather than get like a one-day hit from, being able to write some exclusive thing, I decided in that case that I was more concerned about the platform and the effects that it might have on Nokia and all that stuff. And that was an example of something that I really, I did sit on purpose, And it's interesting because, Mary Jo had forwarded me something someone else had written where why, if you knew about this, why wouldn't you have written about it? And I think my off-the-cuff response to her was maturity and morals. I don't know. It's a lot of things. It depends on what we're talking about. There were a couple of months ago. There were reports about how much Microsoft Nokia were going to spend on marketing. Remember Windows Phone and everything. And I had information that contradicted that that I knew to be real. And so it's the type of thing I was not going to write about ahead of time. I expected and was told that a lot of that information was going to come out at CES and or at Nokia's press conference at CES, and it never did, which is weird, because it makes me wonder if what was written in the interim affected what Microsoft was going to do, and Nokia perhaps, So it depends on what it is,
That's a really good point because. Yeah, it's not always Microsoft giving us NDAs either. Sometimes a source will give you something and say, "Okay, you can only use this if X happens."
Oh,
You can only go out with this if somebody else kind of starts leaking it, or you can only go out with this if a partner says this first, and then okay, you can. So we also have to live with those constraints, because if you burn your sources and break those promises, they're not going to give you anything anymore.
Right, then you're worthless. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that stuff's tough because I think that people understand that I am legitimately a fan, let's say, of Windows Phone in particular, obviously of Windows 8 as well. Doesn't mean I love Microsoft and I have like a Windows tattoo on my shoulder or something. I really feel strongly about this stuff. And I think people understand that, and maybe that's part of the reason some of this information comes my way, and that's great. I certainly respect the, you should keep this close to the vest kind of thing. Unfortunately, sometimes that stuff comes out. I mean, a lot of times, it's funny, like the Windows Phone 8 stuff, what I was going to do was just kind of write up something and sit on it, and just have it ready to go. And I'm lazy. I didn't do it. So then it just happened. And then I had to respond to it instead.
Right.
It's just what happened.
Well, actually, let's take a break, and then I will say what you have been talking a lot about.
Yes.
And you guys have done a really good job. Paul just wrote a very good, I thought, piece on WinRT. So you guys especially, I think, do a great job of that exact kind of thing you were talking about, Mary Jo, which is taking something that is ill-explained by Microsoft, fairly technical and complex, and elucidating. And so we'll talk about Metro style versus Metro styled in just a bit. Also, Kinect for Windows is here. I'm sure Paul and Mary Jo have something to say about that. Brandon Watson, also gone. We'll talk about that and a lot more coming up in just a bit. Before we do that, though, let me talk about when we were in New York last week when I was in New York last week to do live with I don't know, sometimes I get in the royal we, and that's probably not a good idea. When we were traveling last week.
Yes, I remember it fondly.
We had a very nice meeting with Anthony Casalena, who is the guy who in college decided that there needed to be a better way to blog and wrote an amazing content management system, which to this day Paul Thurrott regrets not using. It's called Squarespace.com. And since it's turned into a large company, he just took his round of venture funding last year, and they've just grown like Topsy. And I'm just the more I use it, the happier I am. And I've just saw it. So when I was there, and I shouldn't talk about it, but I saw a preview of Squarespace 6, which has been much rumored and much talked about. It is awesome. These guys are advancing the art of web hosting, web building, beyond anything anybody else is doing, and it is a great company. So I want to invite you, if you're ready to start a website, or you have a website that you're not completely happy with, I have decided to move my Leoville blog. It's currently a hosted WordPress, which I did for many years because I felt I needed to know WordPress and all that. But finally, I'm just giving in. And I'm going to put it on Squarespace 6 the minute they'll let me, because you will flip your lid when you see this. Squarespace is hosting plus the best content management software you ever saw. The templates are gorgeous, and they're not templated. How do I describe this? You have complete creative control. You start with a gorgeous style designed by the best designers in the world, and then from there, customize it in every way you want. They support Google Web Fonts, so that means you have 300 plus fonts you can use on your website. They do support CSS, but you don't need to know CSS because they have drag and drop, point and click for everything, including all the social widgets that are spectacular. You automatically get a mobile site, and because it's just part of the set, and their iPad, iPhone, Android phone apps are fantastic ways not only to blog, not only to post content, but also to moderate content, to keep an eye on stats. I mean, just incredible. I want you to try it. Now, here they have made it as easy as can be. If you go to squarespace.com, there's a big green try it free button. You don't need an offer code. You don't need a credit card. You just need three things: the name of your new site, mynewsite.squarespace.com. By the way, you can have it be your own domain name, but just for the trial, just do it at squarespace.com. You have a password and an email address, and boom, you created a website. You have full use of all the Squarespace features for 15 days. see what it's like. If you decide you like, and you make it realistic, import your existing content. It supports all the major APIs, WordPress, Blogger, Movable Type, and Typepad. So all the links are preserved, all the comments, everything's URL remapping is automatic, so your URLs do not change. So you really can see with fully populated content what this new site will look like. If you decide to buy, very affordable, but I have a special deal. Now, this is where the offer code comes in. 15% off their regular prices for the first 6 months of your site when you use Windows 2 as your offer code. All right, Windows and the number 2 as your offer code for February. And you will have a site that just never goes down because Squarespace has such a sophisticated server system that it's amazingly robust. You'll have a gorgeous site. If you're not sure, take a look at the example sites in every category. It's not just blogs, it's portfolios, it's nonprofits, it's commercial businesses, it's e-commerce. Squarespace.com. Try it today. Just click that green button. And when you decide to buy, use Windows 2 to get 15% off for your first 6 months. I am just thrilled. Oh, actually, another thing you should look at. Go to the Squarespace blog because they're doing some really interesting stuff. And this is where you will see previews and everything about what Squarespace is up to. They have little podcasts they do. And they're doing some interesting stuff with styles. And they talk about SOPA, by the way, as well, if you're at all interested. Anthony is the guy, Anthony Casalena, who founded it, and a sweetheart. We're just very fond of him. He writes here about Squarespace 6. Public beta invites are going out, so join now, because you're going to want to be participating in this. Squarespace.com. Squarespace is not for SOPA. Random 47. Are you kidding me? You think we'd... No, of course not. They say end piracy, not liberty, because they stand in strong opposition to protect IP and SOPA, of course. Squarespace.com. Windows 2, the offer code. And we thank them very much for their support of Windows Weekly.
Windows 2, the quickening.
Yes, yes. So I did want to give a plug for your blog post on the SuperSite for Windows on you call it Windows 8 Secrets, Windows Runtime. What is the difference between something that looks like Metro and something that is Metro? Is it WRT?
It's a good question. Actually, I was as you were doing the Squarespace ad there, I was thinking about Andrew Schulman and Windows 95. And how Microsoft had come out in the beginning and said Windows 95 is going to be a fully 32-bit operating system that does not rely on DOS. It's not a thing on a thing. That was how we used to say it back then. And Andrew Schulman proved conclusively that was not the case.
Wrong.
And the reason I think of that is because Microsoft is saying now that WinRT, or the Windows runtime, is the new Windows runtime, thus the name. And that it's not Win32 anymore, but the Win32 is still there,
right? And
so is the desktop. And
right.
I actually don't know. I'm not saying that the WinRT is based on or is on top of or needs Win32, et cetera. But it's a squishy topic. And in the writing of the book that I'm working on, there's a lot of background material. I thought it might be interesting for people if I put up early versions of some stuff. And get some feedback and see how it goes. So WinRT is a very technical topic. It's kind of a tough one.
All you have to do is look at this diagram.
Yeah, which is right.
And it all becomes clear.
Yeah.
As much.
So actually, by the way,
I like the third diagram.
Let's go down.
Yeah,
this one.
He does do a better job.
Or this one.
I very specifically did not make my own diagram.
Thank you.
Because I didn't want to get to, because it would be by definition wrong in some way. And
right.
I don't think for my audience that's important,
This is for developers to kind of understand what they're interacting with. What's things are the same.
The thing I would like to see next to this is, because this describes the WinRT environment, but sitting next to this thing, if you will, is of course the legacy desktop environment as well, Win32.
Right.
And it's not clean though. It's not fair to say that these things are even next to each other, really, because I think unfortunately the real view of this would be there are weird tendrils that go from these boxes to other boxes in weird directions, and it's messy. It's way messier than even that diagram suggests.
Yeah, as is life.
Yeah, but the reason people need to understand this, even non-developers, is Microsoft's really just throwing the word Metro around very loosely, casually. Yeah. And so there's two different things you can mean when you say an app is a Metro app, right? It can be a Metro look and feel. So, it looks like an app that would be using that kind of type font that they use and having the bleeding screens. And it would be adhering to their design philosophy and their design language. But if you call an app a Metro style app, like if those two words are together, you mean an app that must use WinRT when you build it. And so all these apps that we were talking about today on Windows 8 on ARM, they must be WinRT apps. They must be Metro style apps. And it's true that all Metro style apps look Metro-ish, but it's not true that all Metro-ish apps are Metro style. Chew on that one.
Actually, I would even say the reverse is not necessarily true. It's possible, I'm sure, to use the WinRT to make a full screen app that doesn't look anything like Metro. I mean,
oh, wow, really?
I mean, why not? Sure, why not?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to, but you could.
No, not necessarily. I mean, obviously, games are one of those instances where you want to take
There's no
over the
interface.
screen
It's your own
and
interface.
do your own UI.
Yeah.
So if you think about the way Windows Phone works, I know that in the first version of Windows Phone, there were two environments. There was Silverlight and I almost said XAML. There was Silverlight and...
Well, if you look at the graphic, you examine overall the total entirety of the Windows 8 metaspace.
Anyway, the point is in 7.5 they've combined them so that you can make apps that use both environments. And one of the benefits of doing that is you get all of the built-in controls that are available in Silverlight, but you get to essentially put your own UI on top of them. So instead of having to reinvent a push button or a text label or something, you can just use this stuff that's built into the OS, and then you can throw your own stuff on top of it. So I think what we're going to see in Windows 8 is going to be very similar, where most productivity-style apps, if you will, or utilities and so forth, are going to want to take on this Metro design language and use all of the interactive stuff that is very common to all apps. But there's also going to be some kind of a pushback, I think, from people who have maybe strong branding needs, or obviously a game, which is a completely different thing. But they're going to want it to be like their own thing too. So you need to have there's going to be some kind of a weird middle ground in there too. There's no reason you couldn't write a Metro looking app today in Win32 or WPF or Silverlight or whatever. I mean, it's very vague to me, and I this is one of those areas where I wish Microsoft would get the language down.
I think they should call it a WinRT app. Why can't they call these WinRT apps instead of Metro style?
Right.
Why not, Microsoft?
Why not? Why not?
It's not specific enough.
All right.
Yeah, that was what I think I'd written this in the notes almost 2 years ago now. The very first time I met with the Windows Phone guys about Windows Phone, I said, "Look, I'm writing a book. I need to know the language you're using to describe everything." And they said, basically, that's an exact quote, by the way, because they hadn't really come up with all of it yet. That took some time. They're actually much better about that now. They have a good list. And so when the Windows 8 developer previews happened, I wrote an article or a blog post. I think it was something like Windows 8 terminology. And I tried to do the same thing that I had done for Windows Phone very early on, although this time I did it publicly, where I said, here, if you listen to what they say, here's how they describe things. So, for example, when you swipe on the right edge of the screen, Windows 8 has various edge UIs. They have app bars that can pop up when you swipe up or down from the top or bottom. And they have these charms. And so I asked them at the time, I said, so this charms bar that comes up on the side, and they said, whoa, charms bar? We don't call that the charms bar. And I said, well, what do you call that?
Bar, buddy.
Yeah, he said, oh, those are just charms. And I'm like, yeah, that's cute, but they're in a thing.
They're in a bar. So what do you call the bar?
This overlay. And he said, no, those are just charms.
Oh, Lord.
I'm like, that's not.
Lord.
No, you need a word for that. It's kind of like think about a Windows Phone app where you're pivoting between different screens, but there are headings right at the top. are those things you're pivoting between? Are they screens? Are they panels? Do you call them pivots? Actually, the answer to that question is out there. I'm just saying, in the early days, I had that question, and I have similar questions today about very specific Windows 8 UI elements. But the most basic of all of them is what Mary Jo was raising, which is Metro style. Like Metro style? Can't we just call them Metro apps or WinRT apps? I mean, can't there just be a name for this stuff? But they can't, because actually they're using Metro style across different environments, right? There's the Xbox 360 has a Metro style user interface now. Windows 8 does, and Windows Phone does as well. But none of those things today are the same thing underneath. So maybe that explains it.
All right. I feel comfortable. Well, no, I don't. But. So and it came out, and did you try the new Kinect for Windows, anybody?
Yes, I did.
$249. It looks the same, right? But it's designed really just so you can be up close. Because otherwise,
it's money well spent, Leo.
Is it? Somehow I feel that's a sarcastic comment.
Not only does it look just like the existing Kinect, but now it doesn't play any games.
Did they just, honestly, they could have just put like a focusing lens on it so that you can be closer.
It comes in a box with no documentation whatsoever.
Really?
You go to the website to look up something. There must be something, and there isn't. No, there are no sample apps. There's no utility where you can configure it, and nothing. There's nothing.
Not a
thing. It literally exists only so developers can use it and write apps, and then maybe someday in the future this thing will actually be useful.
Someday my apps will come.
Now, there are going to be people who are going to say, Paul, you ignorant idiot.
It works just like that. Fine with Internet Explorer.
No, it doesn't work fine with anything. It doesn't work with anything. It doesn't do anything.
Nothing.
You can install an SDK. You can write applications in C++ or C# if you want.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why they would make retail packaging available that you can buy from Amazon or the Microsoft Store. Like, why would you make this available to human beings? This should be something where you go to msdn.microsoft.com and you order it from them, and they ship it to you and you write apps, and then maybe the retail launch happens this Christmas when there are actually apps that you can buy. But they didn't do it that way. It's very curious to me.
Curious.
Yeah, it was never clear, especially when it was available for Amazon pre-order. I think a lot of people thought, oh, cool, I'm going to order one.
It'll come with something. Something will be bundled in there.
PC,
yeah.
Right?
Maybe it'll come with Office.
Yeah, but it's not. No. Yeah, it's totally a developer thing. Developer thing. Yeah, it's supposed to be for people developing.
People who bought Microsoft Kinect for Windows often bought Microsoft Office.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny we're joking about that, but I think this is who they're trying to attract with this thing is people who will write business apps.
Right. It makes sense.
Not necessarily gamers, although I don't think they turn gamers away. But, I mean, they're looking for people who, want to develop the ultimate ERP app using Kinect for Windows.
I can't imagine there's a huge audience for that. But why wouldn't you just port some basic Kinect games to this thing?
Something. Just like the fishing game or something. Just give me something.
Or just the management UI where you configure it to see you and know that it's you, that kind of stuff.
Maybe we talk to the computer. There's something.
Too basic.
All right, well, there you go.
There you go. That's what it is.
They are moving their CRM apps to iPad.
Guess whose story this is?
They're busy. CRM finally on the iPad, the iPhone, the Android as well. Oh, of course, Windows Phone too.
Yep.
That's cool.
And Paul, unlike you, there are people who are super excited about this.
Well, Paul has no customers to relate to, so he doesn't need CRM.
Out of my back.
Customer relation management for Paul is saying, honey, do you need anything when I'm going to the market? It's much simpler.
Now, this is cool. What's really so there's two cool things about this to me. One is they're going to have all of these things available simultaneously. So in sometime between April and May, you're going to go to the Android store or the Apple store or Windows Phone Marketplace, wherever you want, and download this application from Microsoft, which is their CRM app. And it's not cheap. It's $30 a month per user, which I thought was like, whoa. But then I looked at how much Salesforce charges for a comparable.
That's $360 a year. That's nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Salesforce, $65 a
Right,
month per
right,
user.
right.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
actually
that
pretty
is
cheap
expensive.
if you're a CRM user. But yeah, it's very interesting. And the other interesting thing is that this is going to be on a very regularly updated schedule. You know, you're going to have new releases coming out quarterly, probably, of this, and all kinds of new features, new things that are more like Facebook coming to Microsoft CRM. So, you know, voting up, thumbs down on things that are in your activity feed. So it's like consumer infusion coming to a very enterprise-focused app. Yep.
Yep. And OneNote.
Consumerization of IT.
And I'm downloading it right now because it says this in your notes. I can get OneNote on my Galaxy Note. This will be a Galaxy Note.
Yep. OneNote, now on Android.
Yay.
Android phones.
That's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised how many people cared about that too. You know, on Twitter, people are like, "Oh, finally, I've been waiting for this. I'm so glad I can finally get OneNote on here."
Right.
I like to see all the Microsoft users come out of the closet like that. It's nice.
We're using Android. What do you have for us?
Don't tell anybody it's the new Windows.
So Brandon Watson has moved on?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what's going on? So it was Charlie Kindle went?
Kindle? Charlie Kindle.
I don't like, ever since Amazon came out with that e-reader, I feel I shouldn't call him Kindle.
I misspell his name all the time. So, yeah, I like Charlie Kindle. You know, Brandon was one of the good guys. And it's tough.
We
because
talked to him. He was the guy who was going to do the challenge with me, right?
Yeah.
My
I would
friend
say
Brandy.
From a obviously from a developer's perspective, but also just from a general evangelism perspective.
I agree. He was great.
He was the face of
was
Windows
great.
Phone.
So where's he going?
He's going
to Amazon.
Did Kindle go to Amazon? Because that would be appropriate.
No.
No. No, he's
Although
going to
there are a lot of
Amazon.
Microsoft-
Brandon Watson is to work on the Kindle apps part of the business. So he's going to do,
kind of the same thing.
Kindle app for Windows Phone. Right. He's not working on the hardware. He's working on apps for different platforms, Windows Phone, and I think for the Kindle also. So yeah,
And also
but
probably for Windows 8.
yes, probably so. I believe. So that's good. You know, it's good they're bringing a Microsoft guy in to focus on Windows Phone, Windows 8. It's a big loss for Microsoft developers because he really was a really dynamic champion for the developers. And right now, there's still no replacement for him at Microsoft. And so it'll be interesting to see what they do there, how fast, and who becomes the new Brandon Watson.
Right.
I think it's fair to say we have a theory about this in a way, because when you look at Windows Phone becoming part of Windows, becoming very closely related, it's not hard to imagine, especially after Andy Lee's was kind of pushed aside, that perhaps the Windows Phone group will be coming under the control, if you will, of the Windows group. You know, that maybe
Right,
Steven Sinofsky will
right.
be involved with that. And maybe not coincidentally, there's a Mobile World Congress show coming up at which Mr. Sinofsky will be present. And maybe that's, part of the deal.
Wow, isn't that interesting? So that's really
Just a theory,
a lot
but
to that.
Yeah.
Wow. Very, very interesting.
Not sure if it's causal. I don't know if that led to Brandon getting out of there or not,
Yeah.
but interesting.
Yeah. Well, I never did do the Windows. He was the guy who did all those Windows Phone challenges with Molly Wood and Scott Adams. And I guess I'm not getting that Lumia 900 after all.
You still might.
We could make that.
No, actually, Nokia is sending me one.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Microsoft is selling off its part of Tell Me. Does it Tell Me tell me what powers the speech recognition in Windows Phone? Or not?
Yes.
It is.
They do.
Okay.
Yep. And Windows Phone, they were part of the Windows Phone and the Kinect deals. So some of Microsoft's speech technology is in both of those things.
Okay.
But the part of Tell Me they're selling off, this is interesting. So Microsoft bought Tell Me back in 2007. They paid like $1 billion or so for Tell Me.
Very
they got
expensive.
400 people. Yeah, it was expensive at the time. And so they bought two things. They bought like a core set of speech technologies when they bought them. And they bought a voice platform where you have automatic response. So when you call your airline and you get the automated voice response and you ask, is my flight on time? That technology they bought as well. And they never really did a whole lot with that part of Tell Me. They kind of had it. They didn't really know what to do with it. And that's the part that they're selling off. They're selling it to a company called 24/7, which is a automated customer support company in California. And they won't say how many people are leaving as a result of this. They're licensing that to that company, and they're going to take that part of Tell Me forward. And now, this is really interesting to me. So the part that stays, the part of Tell Me that stays in Microsoft, is now part of Bing. Think about that.
Do you think they'll put voice in Bing?
Well, it's sort of already is there. Yeah, I mean, the phone has the voice search.
Right.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so it's
the
Bing app, right?
That's where you see the
it's the Bing app.
The voice. The Tell Me logo on Windows Phone.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. But there's also parts of Tell Me that are experimenting a little more with natural language query capabilities. Like Microsoft really wants to do what Siri does on the PC, though. They want you to be able to say to your PC, get me set up for my trip to Barcelona. And the PC does that. And the way that has to happen is through some voice technologies and also natural language processing capabilities. I mean, there's a lot of things that have to all kind of come together for that to happen. I mean, I don't think we're going to see a really working prototype of something that involved for a couple more years from Microsoft. But that's the part that's going to be working on it, the part that is remaining from Tell Me that's now in Bing.
Paul, you went.
So you use the Windows Phone version of Siri, which is only about here.
I'm installing OneNote right now on my.
This time it actually did a search. Bugaboo versus Oregon.
Well, there you go. So it's working.
Curious.
They fixed it.
Sorry, I can't hear anything.
Oh, well, it's working though, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, you do see a Microsoft Tell Me logo on Bing voice search in Windows Phone. So.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, your tip of the week, Paul, software pick of the week, an enterprise pick of the week, a code name. Yes, we have a code name of the week as well. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about Audible.com. Paul and I are big audiobook fans, of course, as you know, and Audible is the #1 premier way we get our audio fix every day. I am reading on your recommendation and loving it, the Stephen King 11/22/63 book. You know what I really like, Paul, is the narrator, Craig Wasson. Is fantastic.
Yep.
It's a performance. Really wonderful. And now, no spoilers because I'm only about a third of the way through it, but it's a long book.
It's about time travel.
I do know that. And I like time travel books. And I can't think of it. Has Stephen King ever done any other time travel books? I don't think so.
Sort of. Actually, oddly enough, the last pick that I had was a Stephen King book that sort of involved time travel, the Bag of Bones. He doesn't literally try. It's sort of a dream state, but he goes back in time and witnesses what happened in the past.
You're right. So yeah, you're right.
Some elements of time travel.
So this time another Stephen King novel from Audible.com. Let me explain why we do this. If you go to Audible.com/Windows, you can sign up for the Audible Gold account. That's the book a month subscription. It's a very efficient and affordable way to get a book every month. And what's nice, they give you that first month for free, so your first book is for free. And so one of the challenges when you get to Audible.com with 100,000 titles, I mean, this is the best library in the history of the world. It's interesting, there are a number of Kennedy assassination books in the top downloads now because I think of that Stephen King book. But Paul wants to recommend another Stephen King book this time around. Yeah,
I went on sort of a Stephen King bender recently, actually, because of
11/22/63, yeah.
Yeah, so after Bag of Bones, it's actually been some time now, but The Dark Half is an older book by Stephen King. Also, like Bag of Bones, about a writer, which is clearly modeled after him again. In this case, modeled after his experiences writing under a pseudonym. Remember that there was a time where Stephen King was writing so prolifically that they had Richard Bachman. So
Bachman, that's right.
This book is about an author who has an alter ego, and the alter ego actually comes to life and is literally his alter ego. So the guy's evil and kills people, and it was made into an okay movie. Actually, I think Timothy Hutton, if I'm not mistaken, was the main character. But kind of a Stephen King classic and a good one. And I'm fascinated by the King books that involve writing, as
Me too.
as we discussed previously, and this is also a good one along those lines. Although obviously fiction writing, so a classic, not a new book, but a very good one.
There you go. The Dark Half. Stephen King, the writer. Grover Gardner, the reader. You can always get a sample. If you want to find out what the book sounds like, you just go to the page with the book, and they have a little sample button. I do encourage that.
Held him in their grip, but lie in his darkened room.
Oh, I've heard his books before. He's great.
By the end of September, he hoped he would die. And by the middle of October...
You may think, I think some people do, I don't know if I can listen to a book. So that's why we do that first book, to give you a chance to try it. It's free, no risk. Just go to audible.com/Windows, sign up. But I have to say, if you're listening to podcasts, you probably are a natural audiobook listener. And it changed my experience. When I was commuting, it saved my life commuting to the screensavers every day. 2 hours on the road every day really kind of killed me. And thank God for Audible. And that's back in 2000 when I first subscribed. And I still listen all the time at the gym, which I hate, but I got to do it. So I bring Audible with me. When I'm doing housework, when I'm driving around, audible.com. In fact, it gets to the point where you love your books so much that you just get in the car for any reason. I strap Audible on all the time, even when I'm just walking around the house. I play it through my Sonos so I can listen to my books. I make the whole house resound with my books when nobody else is home. I listen on my iPhone, on my Android phone. They've got great Audible apps, and I am told Audible app is coming next month to Windows Phone. So that'll be something we'll celebrate. Audible. That's not from Audible. That's an unofficial rumor, but I believe it because they got to have it. Audible.com/Windows. Give it a try today. You will love it. And now, Paul Thurrott, your tip of the week.
Microsoft published a post the other day that I thought was really interesting. It involved how to protect your Xbox Live ID, which is actually your Windows Live ID, which is why I'm interested into it. I have switched recently to using Hotmail, and while I know it doesn't seem crazy that the Microsoft guy would suddenly be using a lot of Microsoft services, the one thing that they do have that is a little bit troubling is, you have this one account where it goes to everything. And in the Microsoft world, your Windows Live ID is not just email and calendar and contacts. It's all your Xbox stuff. It's your Zune stuff. It's your Windows Phone login. I mean, it's sort of a single point of failure. So
it's my old Passport login is the same. So
exactly, that's exactly right. Yeah. So obviously, when you have that kind of a thing, there are security concerns, and they have a good post, I think, about some of the things they're looking at. And they're going to be making changes in the future. But they have a link to a document that explains how you can secure this account better. One of the big questions I got when I switched to Hotmail was whether Hotmail had anything like dual-factor authentication like Gmail has. And they don't. They have something called additional security proofs, which is not the same thing, but is something that certainly anyone who uses this kind of ID heavily should look into. And the advice is simply just to go take a look at this thing. Not necessarily my post here, but the post that I linked to. There's an open letter to customers from a guy in the Xbox Live team, but also an Xbox Live security page, an Xbox Live account security page, which is very valuable and something that anyone with a Windows Live ID should absolutely take a look at.
Good stuff. I will do that. That's our tip. Your software?
Yeah, so we mentioned this briefly earlier, but OneNote just came out for Android. So OneNote, it's interesting, is an excellent note-taking application. The problem in the past was that it used to be really tied to Windows-based PCs. And they've improved it over time so that now you can have your notes hosted in the cloud. They can be up in SkyDrive, which is where I primarily use OneNote from, including our show notes, obviously. Mm-hmm. They could be on SharePoint or SharePoint Online. They can be in Office 365. And that opened up the app very dramatically, but now they're making it available in all the major mobile platforms. So you can get it on the iPhone, you can get it on the iPad. It's actually a different version specifically for the iPad. And now you can get it on Android handsets. So they don't have a version that's custom tailored for tablets on Android yet, but you have to think that's coming. The thing that's interesting about the Android version is that it's actually the nicest of the mobile versions. So there's one on Windows Phone too, I should say. And by nicest, I mean if you use any form of styles, like in our show notes, we don't use too many styles, but we have heading styles, level 1 and level 2 headings, and in normal text and hyperlinks and all that stuff. And our show notes actually look better in the Android version of OneNote than they do on anything other than the Windows version.
They
so
do.
I've looked at them on Windows Phone, on the iPad, and on the iPhone. And actually, the Android version is the best one so far. So they've clearly done a nice job. And unlike the Hotmail app that Microsoft made for Android, it actually works in Android 4 as well, which is nice. So I happen to have that Galaxy Nexus phone, the ice cream sandwich-based phone. And this app works fine on there.
I'm using it right now on the Galaxy Note.
Yeah, so you can go in. If you go into our show notes. Yeah, I don't know if you did already, but if you go in there, you'll see.
This is it. It says checking for sections and installs, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, no. Maybe you're probably still hitting the old one on the phone, on the device.
Oh, I'm hitting the old one. There's nothing in there. That's why.
Although, actually, no, there should be sections in there, though. Maybe you can't see them from the device if they're shared for viewing only.
Maybe that's it. I wonder,
because I think the old one would still have
you could see it. But I can't.
I'm not sure why that's the case.
Anyway, yeah, it's very nice. And I'll tell you, even though they don't have a tablet version on something like this, which is a phablet, it's a phone that's 5.3 inches big, so and it's got a stylus. So this is a really good application, I think. Yeah. Now, it doesn't support drawing, ironically, which would be great if it did, because
I think it's probably because so few of those devices have any capacity. Yeah.
Right. But boy, it sure be cool. It does support photography. I can add a picture, of course, or import a picture, and in a way I could, because I could. What I could do is I could import a drawing from the Note, because the Note does have a lot of different drawing programs into it. So I guess in that sense, because I can put an image in there, I can put drawings as well. I think that's my dog, but I'm not sure. No. It's either that or my wig. So anyway, so I'm going to put that in there
like
there.
It's like a Quasimodo shot.
I don't know what the hell. It's funny. I'm sure that I was scratching my head with the camera or something when I took that picture by accident, but it keeps showing up, and I really don't know. Anyway, OneNote, the Android version. Our enterprise pick of the week, MJ,
is Dynamics NAV.
Wow! I'm so excited.
You will be. Listen to this, Leo.
Listen,
yes. Microsoft has 4 different ERP products, and one of them is called Dynamics NAV. And the reason I made this week's enterprise pick of the week is Microsoft has a conference coming up in Houston next month called Convergence. And that they're going to be talking a lot more about how they bring ERP to the cloud there. So they kind of talked about this a little bit last year at Convergence. They said, we're going to have all our ERP apps coming to the cloud. And in fact, they're going to be hosted on Azure, which is pretty interesting because not very many big Microsoft enterprise programs right now are hosted on Azure. Like CRM is not on Azure. I mean, even the consumer stuff, Hotmail, Xbox, those are not on Azure. So it's a big bet for them to take something as involved and that needs to be very reliable and putting it on their Azure cloud. It's a big kind of stamp of approval for Azure. But at Convergence next month, they're going to talk and show more of Dynamics NAV 7, which is the next version, being hosted on Azure. And that's going to be out this year. It's going to be out probably around Q4. And after they get that one on Azure, they're going to be bringing the other 3 products. And the next one to come after NAV is Dynamics GP, which is the Great Plains product, which is used by a lot of enterprise and small, mid-sized business customers. So that's coming to Azure next, probably 2013, I bet, for the GP release. So there you go for Dynamics Nav.
What the hell is ERP? I'm sorry, I'm stupid. I just don't know.
Enterprise resource planning. So it's
like project management. No,
it's more like kind of your financial and your manufacturing systems if you're a business and how you store all your data pertaining to those systems and access it, combine it with things like SQL Server for big data analytics and that kind of thing. So it's very much like your core, very heavily used in like the retail sector.
Right.
A lot of people using ERP.
Cool.
Yep.
And you have a code name for us, I believe, as well.
I do. And this is connected to what we talked about at the very start of the show. So my code name is VS11, Visual Studio Release 11. So a lot of people think this means Visual Studio 2011. It does not. VS11, we believe, is the code name for Visual Studio 2012.
See, it's a good code name because like nobody would guess that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's very convoluted, but there is logic to why it's called that. Microsoft, every time they do a new version of Visual Studio, they use a number. So the last Visual Studio was Visual Studio 10, 9, 8, obviously.
Right.
And Visual Studio 11 is the next release, which everybody believes is going to be this year. And the reason we all think it's this year is because this release of Visual Studio is very tightly tied to Windows 8. There's a lot of capabilities and new features that are much needed by people who are building apps for Windows 8.
Right.
So right now, VS 11 is only out in developer preview. It came out at the exact same time as Windows 8 developer preview in September. And Microsoft has not said, when is the next release? When's the beta of VS 11? I'm betting it might be February 29th or around there.
Ooh.
Because I bet it's tied to the consumer preview, which is really a beta of Windows 8. So a lot of people who are doing apps, they're clamoring for the next release. They're saying, I want to see what they've got. I want to use something that's very much near final to build my apps for Windows 8. I don't want to use the developer preview. So I think your prayers are going to be answered, developers, maybe even this month. But Microsoft's not saying that, of course.
Nope. Shh.
Not them.
Quiet.
Nope.
Zip.
Yep.
I'll say this. We do this show every Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 1900 UTC on TWiT. And you can watch it live at twit.tv. Or, if you miss it, you can get the audio or video versions directly for download. I would say subscribe. You can subscribe on the, what do they call it? It's the Zune Marketplace? Zune Music? I don't know what they call it. The music
don't
market.
get too attached to it, Leo.
That place.
The Zune thing.
The Zune thing. You can get it from Microsoft. You can get it from Apple on the iTunes. You can get it pretty much anywhere podcasts. I hope you subscribe because that way you won't miss a minute of the fabulous Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott is the editor-in-chief of the SuperSite for Windows at winsupersite.com. That's where he hangs his hat, and it's where you will find posts all the time, regularly, on the goings-on around Windows and Xbox and Kinect and everything else. He's also news editor of Windows IT Pro, as analyst for Penton Media, and his latest book is Windows Phone Secrets. Always a pleasure, Paul. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Mary Jo Foley blogs about Microsoft at allaboutmicrosoft.com, and she's probably, even as she's such a good multitasker, she's probably already finished a 4,000-word article about the Sinofsky Post, even as we've been speaking.
Already done two.
Two
downs. Yeah.
That's how good Mary Jo is. You can find it again at allaboutmicrosoft.com. Lots of great stuff. You're right. Wow. Look at that. Did you do that? Well, right before the show.
Right before the show.
Wow.
Not during.
Wow, that's fantastic. Allaboutmicrosoft.com. Thank you, Mary Jo. Thank you, Paul. We'll be back next week at our regular time with another exciting episode, another thrilling episode of Windows Weekly. See you then.